So therapy is very important for autism. And before we get into therapy, let's talk about some definitions. Trajectory, okay? Trajectory is the path, the progression, the line of development influenced by internal and external structures, people, or experiences. In other words, stimuli. So some examples are cement when it's being poured, a tree when it's growing, or a toy rocket that's being used in the yard. Each of these examples, it is critical in the early presentation or course of the cement, the tree, the rocket. You have greater success to change the trajectory, to modify the trajectory if you intervene early in the presentation. Late in the presentation, your success rate decreases for modifying the trajectory. And remember, trajectory is the path, progression, or line of development. So, in the case of cement, you'll have great success writing your name in the cement early on when it's fresh. Once it's dried, good luck trying to write your name in the cement. The same with the tree. If you desire a tree to ornately grow in a spiral or certain shape, you have greater success trying to modify that growth early on in its development. So neurons, brain cells, follow a trajectory path. And this trajectory is started long before the baby's even born in the form of genetic influence through DNA, in the form of generational behaviors and traits that come from grandparents, great-grandparents, and further back. If a baby's born with autism, and that's the trajectory that's programmed into the brain, and there is no resistance, no modification early on, no intervention, that trajectory will result in high autism traits and presentations. Another definition to review when we talk about therapy, neuroplasticity. That's a fun word to say, neuroplasticity. This is the miracle of neurons' ability to accept new structure, new connections, and new function based on repeated stimuli from the environment, from people, from situations, from memory. So if you have neurons that are primarily impacted by autism in structural plasticity through therapy, that function that the brain cell is responsible for can be transferred to another neuron that's less affected by autism, giving greater success for rehabilitation. Now, neuroplasticity during the development from childhood to adulthood is a very natural process. And it's natural because the brain is programmed to strengthen and multiply those neurons which are used more often. And the neurons that are used less often, or even the connections that are used less often, those elements gradually become extinct. They actually wither away. You can see it under a microscope. Those cells wither away and are insignificant in the brain if they're used less often. So an example of this is perfect pitch. Another example is racism. Another example is fear, autistic traits, and seeking attachment. All of these things are activities that the brain engages with. And depending on how often or how frequent or how continuous these activities occur and influence the neurons that house these activities, those neurons will either strengthen, grow, and multiply, or they will become extinct. So time is essential when we talk about therapy, considering neuroplasticity and also considering trajectory. Time is the critical element. And we know from research that the first 3 years of life is when this time factor is most crucial, because that's when the cement is moist and soft. And you can modify with neuroplasticity, you can modify those cells, those brain cells that have been trajectorized to autism. You can modify that outcome if we start early. Basically, the younger you are when you start therapy, the higher success in taking advantage of plasticity. The older you are, the decreased success for plasticity success. So, what therapies are used for autism? Okay? There are many therapies that are used. I'm going to start with ABA. ABA stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis. Okay? The applied refers to the intentional relevance of the therapy to the reason for the behavior. In the old days, behavioral therapy was focused on just removing the actions. But now we know from research it's more healthy to determine the cause for the action. Here's an example. I'm hungry, I have autism, so I bang my head when I'm hungry. We don't want to remove the hunger element because that's a healthy stimulation to nourish, but instead we replace the head hitting with some words that say I'm hungry, or a button for a assistive device to say I'm hungry for you. The B in ABA therapy is behavioral, interactions, social skills, interaction with toys, with people, with other items in the room. And then the analysis is the scientific part to reassure you that therapy is not a wishy-washy or a some cosmic power that people are trying to do on kids. It's scientific. And the analysis part is scientific because it's reproducible. You can document it, you can track and plot the success. Very sophisticated software to show the analysis of the ABA therapy. So, other therapies that are successful with autism are speech therapy, occupational therapy, aquatic therapy, play therapy. There's even sand therapy. I recently worked with PCIT therapists, parent-child interaction therapy, and that is an amazing tool for children and parents with autism. School and employment as children get older with autism is also an amazing therapy. And we'll talk more about those on future videos. Now, there are two final elements that increase the success of therapy and make neuroplasticity and make trajectory modification more successful. And research is showing us that these two elements are vital for all the other therapies to be successful long term. The first one is community support. Community support refers to those who are not doctors, who are not autism specialists. So who are they? Teachers, friends, family, neighbors, other kids, coaches, spiritual leaders. So this is community support. That is very important for all the other therapies to be successful. And the second augmenter of autism therapy is community awareness. Everybody has to be aware and learn and have an interest in discovering how the autistic brain works and mechanisms and techniques to add to the quality of life for children and adults with autism. So community awareness affects the architecture of a room, how bright the lights are, how loud the speakers are, the design of the furniture. Can the furniture rock and sway in an ergonomic fashion that calms autistic traits? And teachers, coaches, employers, instead of punishing and stigmatizing people with autism. They can apply their awareness, they can apply therapy, they can apply these skills to give a better quality of life for persons with autism. So thank you for listening. It's time for me to do my exercise. I'm going to train I'm going to take advantage of neuroplasticity and work on my muscles, all right? Push-up time, 1,000 push-ups, go!